We are live and recording. Awesome. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us on the Todoist office hours today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chase. Really appreciate it. This is gonna be awesome. I'm looking forward to geeking out about Todoist and how I set it up and keep it simple. Right first thing in the morning for me. So
Yeah, if we're here, we're all excited about geeking out about Todoist. So for everybody here that's watching from the multiple different avenues, whether you're on Crowdcast, Twitter, YouTube, we're all here for the same reason, and Mike is the perfect person to help us geek out about it. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to let you do your own little intro, and but I will just say from my standpoint and the people here at Doist, Mike is somebody we've collaborated with a lot over the years, and we value his opinion and thoughts on productivity and Todoist, and so it's really awesome to have him on the Todoist office hours and to pick his brain on how to keep it simple with Todoist. So I'll turn it over to you, Mike, to give yourself a little bit of a better who is Mike Vardy and what does he do as a productivity strategist?
Sure. So I'm based in Victoria, BC. I see a lot of people from all over the world in the chat right now here on Crowdcast.
It's really cool.
Awesome. You know, I mean, Don, I before we went live, I said hello to Don Coven, who's I think he's on the Lower Mainland, so not too far from where I am in Victoria. So I wanted to make sure I said, hey, Don, good to see everybody in that's watching this live today. So my history is a rich and winding one when it comes to the world of productivity. I've been around the space for a while, and I basically, my job is to help people craft their time. Whether it's through the use of courses or my writing that I've done through my podcast, the Productivityist podcast, my fledgling YouTube channel, not nearly at the level that Carl's or Francesco's have been or at, as well as, through the books that I've written. I've got another book that's in the works right now. Publication has been delayed. You could probably guess based on the current scenario in the world why it's delayed. Can't exactly travel to talk about the book very far. So, but yeah, I mean, I've been using Todoist for a long time. I've tried my fair share of apps. And one of the principles that I've followed over the years, especially as somebody who really was kind of a productivity enthusiast, who then became a specialist and then into a strategist form, which is where I am now, is I've played with the apps. I've dug deep, and it comes back to that quote, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? And that's what I want to share on today's session, is the idea of, look, yes, there's tons of bells and whistles in Todoist, just like tons of other apps out there. But I want to show you, like, in case you get overwhelmed, if you're a new user and you're like, there's so many things I can do, and then that bias takes over. I'm not using all of Todoist, so therefore, why am I even using it? By the same token, if you're somebody who has been using a lot of it and you find that it's getting kind of like Christmas lights that you put away for the year and then you try to put them back up and they're all tangled and you're like, what happened here? How did I get this out of control? That's kind of what I want to talk about today, because I've gone down both of those paths. And they're a nice little wandering journey for a while, but then sometimes you just need to take things back to basics, and that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about today.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, I think it's an exciting topic, because when we talk to users of all shapes and sizes that are at their different journeys with Todoist, we do find that both those things happen. One, people get in and they get very excited and they see all the cool shiny features and they want to put them to use right away. And that can become overwhelming and actually be anti-productive. And then the other thing, as you mentioned, is you get deep over the years, you go deep into Todoist, and you've kind of found yourself at a place where you're wondering, why haven't I gotten back to some of the basics that served me so well in the beginning? So this will be a good reminder for people that are getting started and those that are pretty far along in their Todoist journey. And so I will just reiterate some of the sort of the concepts for today. So Mike's going to go through some basically a presentation and kind of tell you some of his tips and best practices. I'll ask some questions down below. For those of you watching on Crowdcast, you'll be able to send in your questions. So go ahead and start doing those as you see them come up, as they come to your mind. We'll try to get to those at the end, where we'll have about 15 or 20 minutes for Q&A. So if you're watching on another platform, we won't be able to see those questions in in real time right now, but we will do our best to follow up. And all of this is being recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel in perpetuity. So no worries if you have to go midway or something, you can catch up with Mike later.
Absolutely. And just to further this, I will be showing my screen through portions of this as well, probably the later bit, so you can see kind of how the sausage gets made, how I work through and what my setup is. But I know having watched previous office hours with Carl Pauline and Francesco, that you're going to probably see me refer to some of that stuff as well. Like, if you want to learn more about like digging deep into filters or digging deep into sections, watch those, because they're the deep dives. I'm going to talk more about the simplicity component of it. So again, when you're to do it, the great thing about productivity and the great thing about the internet and productivity is that there's so many voices out there and there's room for everybody at the table. I remember when I first started out, and for those of you who've been paying attention to productivity for a while online, the likes of, Merlin Mann and Steve Pavlina and all these guys who were at the forefront of it online. And then you had the apps that were at the forefront, like like who remembers IGTD? Does anyone remember that? Or when you had to cobble together a tool, or you were using strictly email, or you were using paper, or a Palm Pilot. And by the way, this is interesting, is I'm a strong believer, and the reason I want to talk about the simplicity component here is you should be able to take the bulk of your system, if not all of it, and be able to move it to paper if you need to. Like, it should be something. So for example, if your phone is dead and you don't have access to Todoist on your phone, or you're in a meeting and you don't want to be able to, you want to actually be focused on the meeting at hand, and you don't want to be, you actually want to be attending the meeting, which means to pay attention to. You want to be able to take those things from paper and migrate them to your app of choice. But you want to be able to do it in a way that's seamless, has very little friction. And I think that's the biggest thing that you can do for your productivity, is have this frictionless, this process, this framework that allows you to do it. And that's one of the things that I've loved about Todoist over the years, is it hits this index that I kind of have used to grade apps ever since I was reviewing them for Cult of Mac and the Next Web. This idea of simplicity and scalability. How simple is it? How can you dig into it? And how easy is it for you to get into it and start using it right away without feeling, oh my God, this is overwhelming. Oh no, how do I use this? But then the next layer to that is the scalability factor. How far will it scale? And for those of you who are playing with the boards, beta access to the boards, there's a classic example of scalability. The introduction of foundations, classic, scalability. Labels, filters. There's even things such as geolocation. Like, that's scalability there. So I think that you need to understand that when you're looking at tools, that you need to have both of those things in mind, which is why Todoist has done so well over the years. I don't often, I am a Todoist ambassador, but I've used, again, plenty of apps, and I still use other apps just to work with other clients and such. But when it comes to the simplicity and scalability scale, Todoist knocks it out of the park. And that's what I want to kind of dive into. I want to talk about the things that I don't do in Todoist first.
Yeah, that's like a great starting point, right? It's like, what don't I do?
So what don't I do? Because what that's going to do is, for some of you watching, you're going to go, okay, well then fine. I'm not going to ask questions about that. Or I am, maybe, as to why Mike doesn't use them. And I'll show, again, a little later, I'm going to show you those things, and you'll see evidence of maybe me trying to use them and then realizing it's not going to work for me. So the first thing I don't use, and this is going to probably, this is built right into the features in the settings area, is I don't use smart dates. I don't use that natural language smart dates. And there's a reason I don't use them.
Super interesting.
The reason is, I'll tell you the story. I was working with a client who lives in Washington, D.C., where the streets are numbered. So we started to use, and they had just set up Todoist, and they were starting to enter things like the 4th Sunday and things like they had to go to 4th Street. Well, when they typed in 4th, Todoist automatically made it work in terms of dating. It worked. It didn't register for addresses. Now, the way around that would be that they could type it, but it's not called FOURTH Street. It's the number 4TH. So
Right.
we abandoned it. And I thought, you know what? Again, frictionless. You don't, if you're typing something in and all of a sudden something shows up that you didn't expect, that's friction. And for me, I noticed that and I said, you know what? I don't want to have to run into this problem again and again and again and again. So I'm just going to remove it. There are the ability to, obviously, in the schedule field, which is what again, I love that. I don't like due dates. I'm not a big fan of due dates. I think every day should be a due date, a DO date, not due date. So I like the schedule because it could mean, when do you want to have it come to your attention? When do you want to actually like accomplish it? So that's where I put that stuff in. So yeah, we removed that. And yes, and again, see, this is again the Vaughn mentions in the chat here. This smart dates is the reason I started using Todoist.
Yeah,
that's why productivity is so personal, right? Like it's nuanced, right? So to that end, and you're going to see this if you look at some of the past office hours and you look at videos and blog posts about Todoist, you'll see, oh, well, Mike does this and Carl does this and Francesco does this. And so you're going to find different people using it differently. That shows the scalability and the power of Todoist. But I don't use smart dates. So if you come across this friction point, you may want to remove it. And yes, Colm also mentioned it depends on your requirements. Again, nuanced. It's personal. So that's one thing I don't use to keep it simple. You're going to...
And Mike, for anybody interested in removing, how did you go about removing it?
So you go into settings. Let me share my screen real quick here. Where is the share option again? Oh my goodness. I'm not seeing it at the top here.
Eleanor's excited. She's already learned that she's already learned something. She can turn these off and she's excited about that. So that's great. I mean, actually that's super interesting for me, Mike, while you're working on that, because it is, probably, I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say it's probably the number one feature in terms of why people say they love Todoist. If you remove that, then, and you still get a lot of value out of it, I think that says a lot of cool things about the product, but it also shows what you were talking about, the flexibility and scalability and how you can adapt it to your personal taste. So even if it's something that a huge percentage of our users love, to have an alternative and to be able to remove that is pretty nice.
I don't think I have sharing capability right now. It's not showing up in the general options there, but I will tell you where you can find it. You can find it if you go, general options. I can't see the ability to share right now. And you go, it's the third thing down. So it's English, then the start page, and then it says smart date recognition. You can say yes or no, thanks. That's up to you. Okay. So that's where I do that. So that's the first thing I say no to. Oh, here we go. Now I can share. All right. Well, I don't need to share yet, but I'll share in just a second. The second thing I don't use, and this is going to be something I think that people are going to find like, what's wrong with you? I don't do subtasks. And
never do a subtask.
Yeah. You don't know. I've played with it, and I can tell you, there are elements of where I've used it when I moved from Asana to Todoist, when it came to using podcast for production for my podcast and for working on my book and such. So I have used it. So let me throw a caveat in there. I've used it. I'm very specific of how I've used it, but with the introduction of boards, sections is going to allow me to eliminate subtasks from the equation because I can treat it a little bit differently. And I think you probably know how, but I'll really reveal that in a little bit. Now, why don't I use subtasks? Well, in my experience, I have found that subtasks, number one, they don't exist really. It's kind of like, and this is my old getting things done methodology training, right? The idea that there's no such thing as a subtask. A task is a task is a task is a task. A task is a single thing, right? So if it's something that takes more than one step to complete, it's a project, right? That's fundamentally, that's what it exists as. So if grocery shopping, it's a project. Driving your car technically is a project. Now, again, I'm not going to go in and write down I'm not going to create the driving car project and put all the steps in. I know how to drive a car. That's what the, the power of habit does, right? But The other problem I found with subtasks, and this is not unique to Todoist, I've seen it, is it's always been hard to engineer for developers. Is if you put dates on subtasks, but then you complete the primary task, what happens to the subtask dates? I can't tell you how many times I've had subtasks just disappear because they or stick around because I completed the primary task and the subtasks are just sitting there. I know Todoist has figured out a better way to do this than pretty much I can't say
it's
all
a surprising undertaking to tackle. It's amazing. The subtask hierarchy tree from an engineering standpoint is actually very messy and very difficult to. It's on the surface seems very simple and it's not. So I can see how just in your everyday use you could say, how about I just remove this and a task is a task and I don't need to be concerned with what a subtask is. Everything's a task. If it goes in there, it needs to get done.
Exactly. And so for me, I think that knowing that and having the experience of working through that with other applications as well as with my own mindset of, there's no such thing as a subtask, it's helped me because I can break down a project into its smallest particles. Like I can take a look at putting together a webinar and break it down to all of those tasks, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is when things start to get really nested, and I do use nested projects in Todoist. You'll see this here in a little while. I want to make sure that I can find them. I want to make sure that nothing gets too buried. And we're going to talk about how I do that as well. But subtasks, again, if they break, then there's friction there. And I'm wondering, why am I not moving things forward? So, and again, it's funny to watch some of the comments like, what? You don't use subtasks? But that's why I used to do it. Again, that's what I love about productivity. It's always personal. If even though business isn't always personal, productivity always is. So the great thing about Todoist is that no matter who uses it, and I do this when I work with teams, if they're implementing Todoist, the very team I was talking about in Washington, I said, listen, have a team task management charter of the things that you do use. Hey, we use this color is for this kind of, like, have something that's consistent, but then everyone can kind of personalize how they use it to the degree that they want to. So subtasks, you're going to see a few of them in my setup for when you'll see them for the podcast. You'll see them for some of the stuff I've been working on. You'll see those there, but I can tell you right now, they won't have dates on them because dates, that's where the danger comes in. And you'll see that they have labels for sure. Okay. Secondly,
Cool.
This is another thing that's going to kind of throw people off is sections. I am only really starting to use sections, but again, I find, and someone mentioned this in the in the chat here, they kind of throw me off. I know that Asana had sections for a long time as well. Sections are going to work once you get using Todoist boards. And again, I know not everybody has access to it right now. Sections are going to become infinitely more useful. Okay. Especially.
And Mike, could you give people in case I know we have some people on here that just got started with Todoist. They may not know what sections are. So could you do a quick, just a 30-second overview of what sections are within a project?
So within a project, sections basically create dividers, right? So they're not something that you can quote complete, which again, if you're a completionist, might throw you off. But they are something that so if you have different stages or milestones, some people use it for that. Hey, these are like, this is Q1, Q2, Q3, or this week, next week, and I'll talk about the dangers of maybe doing it that way. Carl and I have different opinions on using dates in sections and such, but they allow you to divide up a project so you can kind of parse them out a little bit, right? So again, inside of a list-based project, I find them to be not as useful as, say, the labels that have been there for a really long time. I think that they're a useful addition with boards view, because once you move things to boards, what happens is, and I'm not speaking out of school, I think when I share this, is it creates those Kanban style or agile style columns. And that's what the sections can do for you, right? Mm-hmm. So then you can start to really see how these work well, because it's the moving back and forth. But in list view, I find it not as, I find it actually creates more of a block for me than a flow. Does that make sense? And I'd love for you to chime in to see how that, like, whether or not that makes sense to you as well.
Yeah, you nailed it, I think, and Nadia also nailed it here. Dread, terror, procrastination, and defeat are the section names that she has. So
Yeah. Well, and I think that and one of the great things, as soon as boards came into view, um, and I was using Asana for business primarily because of the fact that a lot of people used it. I could invite more people, like, and I knew what was coming. I had a sense of when I saw the way Foundations was laid out. Again, having played with many apps over there, I'm like, oh, here's how they're going to do this. This is
yeah,
I can see this. I'm like, okay, I can move everything into Todoist now, which means I don't need to have one mindset for one app and one mindset for another, like personal for Todoist, professional for
right.
Asana, let's say.
That's a
But
central theme for us right now is becoming better for work and life,
right,
not so much just life. And so you'll,
right.
for those of you watching closely, you'll notice this more and more over the coming months, and boards is a step in that direction. But this is we want to do us to be more powerful for you in your professional life, and we recognize
Exactly.
that.
And so for me, when I saw the way that was going, what sections meant to me at that point, because until boards, I didn't use sections at all. I didn't. I'm like, okay, this is just something I don't need to use. So it's there, and that's the great thing about any app. If you see a feature that's there, I've always believed that a great to-do list app or task management app is it should be as simple as you need it to be, but as powerful as you want it to be. Right. So you
We
can
utter these
grow.
words a lot.
Yeah, you
We
can
say this a
grow.
lot. Simple but powerful.
Yeah, you can grow with it, right? So as you get familiar, you could say, I'm ready for sections now. I'm ready for this. And every time I look at this, I'm like, is this feature, is it something I'm going to need? Am I going to have to navigate it? Or is it something that I don't want to, so I'm just going to leave it alone. So those are the four things, so subtasks, I use projects way more. And then here's the interesting thing, and you're going to see this in my setup. I actually don't look at the projects very often. I focus on labels more than projects. And then when it comes to sections, they're going to be really powerful in my content plan. Like this is, ideation in progress, create, like that's what we're going to see it. And we're going to be able to use that for things like my podcast, for things like courses I'm working on. So that's got me really excited. But again, implementing this stuff is not like something I can do overnight, and that's
Right.
another thing too. I think when you start using Todoist, you can scale with it. You don't need to do it all at once. I mean, there's that old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I think the same thing
Right.
applies here. All right. So let's talk. Let me share what I do have so that way you can kind of see. So I'm going to go to my Chrome tab here. You're going to see, and here's my settings. So I'm going to go to the main account here. All right. So everyone can see this, right? Can you guys see this? No problem.
Let's make sure. Let's see if that's make that the focus screen there. There we
There we
go.
go.
And
Okay.
and while Mike's getting this set up, just a reminder, everybody, if you're watching on Crowdcast, you can drop questions down at the bottom in the Ask a Question section. Some of you are already doing that. If you throw it in the chat, we might get to it, but it's likely to get buried and difficult to find later. So ask those questions at the bottom in the Ask a Question section, and we'll do our best to get to those at the end of the presentation here by Mike.
Perfect. So number one, I normally use dark mode. I've turned it on to use the neutral mode just because for visualization during this presentation, but I love dark mode. It's just something, and I'm a night owl, so it's kind of the thing that I like to see. But you're gonna see like this today view, which is right here. I don't really look at today all that often. So when you see 43 tasks here, you're gonna say, oh my gosh, like how is Mike gonna get all that stuff done? When I work through Todoist, there's things that I keep in mind. Number one is color. Okay. So you can see I've got all these filters, and these are all filters, right? They're all colored in a unique way. These are my daily themes. Okay. And if you follow my work, in terms of time crafting, each of my days have an overarching focus, and I'll share those with you in a minute. And these are horizontal themes in blue. So these are all things that I do that are related to, like I will do during certain times of the day, multiple days a week. These daily themes are overarching focuses for each day. Then I've
And how
got my
did you adjust those colors, Mike?
Okay, so how to adjust the colors? You go into the filters area. Okay, so if I'm in the filters area, you hit the three dots, and then you edit the filter, and then you change the filter color. And there's When I first started with Todoist, there was like 4 color options. I think you've got a
We've gone all
wide
out on
variety.
customing.
So again, and this also happens in labels too. You have a wide variety of colors. So number one, this is and why I love colors. Number one, group them together based on an overarching theme or what they fit into. And I'll talk about this in labels in a minute as well. But use colors that are going to matter. Like green is the color of productivity. They're my daily themes. I want that to be green. That's why I do that. And you can see it's a very simple filter. Planning or family, because those are my Sunday focus, is either planning or family. And then anything that's overdue or due in the next 30 days. And I know Carl's talked about filters as well. So lots of possibilities there for you to do. And then I've added it to favorites. That's huge for me. I love using favorites, right? Because then when I start my day, none of the things I see here allow me to work through. So what I'll do today is today's Thursday. I won't look at today. I'll look at my Thursday focus. Okay. I want to look at my Do My Things free email course that I can map out my next Skillshare class, which I've done with Todoist. If you haven't taken, by the way, if you're on Skillshare, Todoist and I collaborated on a course called Productivity Time Theming, I think is the name of the class. Check it out, because a lot of this stuff I share, and it's a little bit older, but if you want to show, if you want to see like the evolution of my work with Todoist, which won't be that much, it's still very simple. You can see that course as well. So if you've got a Skillshare account, check it out for sure. But you can see like, write this post for Max Barkey. Now, here's an interesting thing. So you can see like the other reason I use color is I can see quickly the differences between labels. So I know, okay, it's now, 4:00. That's when I go into musing mode. Let me look at all the things I can do when I'm in musing. So I'm navigating this. Okay. Oh, it's, I'm going to go back to deep work. Let me look at all my deep work that I can do. And it's, again, sorted by priority level. Then it's sorted by date. And then you're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, right? So that's where I start, is I'll start with a Thursday focus. When I get to my time of day where I'm supposed to be doing either making or maintaining or musing, let's say it's time for me to make stuff, I'll go to making and I'll see some of the dates that I'm supposed to work on, right? So and then ultimately I'll go to today, because most of the stuff will already be done. And then I can check out what's going on for today. That's my workflow. And then if I get all that stuff done, then I'll go back and say, okay, well, what other deep work? Oh, this is next. Okay, let me look at this one. Okay, and you can see that I'm getting enough stuff here that I can just navigate this. So I'm navigating my favorites, which are comprised of filters. Some are projects, as you can see here. And then some are actually just labels, like my annual axiom of whatever it takes, no matter what. That's what that stands for. I've actually got a shirt that says that, stickers, all that stuff. So that's my annual focus. All right. So, but then you're like, okay, well, what's in your inbox? I process my inbox only once per day. I drop things in here, whether it's through links, as you can see here, but just things that come to mind, like publish daily blog post, write my email, write productivity blog post. All these things are in here. And I just added these for the sake of the demonstration here today, but nothing leaves my inbox until later in the day. And then what I'll do is, let's say I'm going to finally fill out this ship it journal that I have from Seth Godin, because I've had it for a long time. I'll edit the task and I'll just go in here and say, okay, well, that's definitely some deep work, which is, the label I use. And I'm going to move it to my productivityist master project. And when's my next deep work day? It's next Thursday. Okay, so I'll do it for next Thursday. And if it's important, which it is, I'll make it priority 2 and done. And that's what I'll do for all my inbox stuff, but I'll only do it once a day. I'll only do this thing once a day. And ultimately, the things that are in my inbox generally don't need to be done today. They generally don't need to be done. So
Mike, if you're adding a task, like something that would go in your inbox, do you ever add it directly to a filter or project? It's just, if it's on your mind, you just drop it in the inbox and then get back to it later.
That's right. I want to stay in flow. So it'll just go into my inbox. And that's another thing too. When I'm still a big fan of emailing tasks to projects, but I only email it to one project, my inbox. So I have an email that comes in. I won't use the Gmail extent. I don't use Gmail's native app. I use Front. I use Front Mail. I have hey.com, which is Basecamp stuff. So that's where my personal email goes. If you want to email me personally, I can screen it. So if you want to email me at mikevardy@hey.com to ask me questions, I'll be able to say yes or no. I love what Basecamp's doing with that. But I don't email, again, to keep it simple, I don't email tasks to any other project but my inbox. And that way I don't need to worry about, okay, did I add a date? Did I add it? Did I change the subject? Like what? No, I'll change the subject maybe, but more often than not, I'm just emailing the task to the project. If it
Yeah.
needs to go into Todoist. In a lot of cases, especially now with more robust email applications, I don't need to do that. I can actually snooze an email until the next daily theme that I want to use it for. Or I can, if it's a task that could be done in that old adage of 2 minutes or less, I can just fire it off. I'm trying to keep, because if I sent every email to Todoist that had a task in it, my Todoist would be even greater than it already is. Because you can see,
Right.
if you look down here, these are other filters that I've used. This one is called no label, and I find this to be a useful filter. So I do use simple filters, and this filter is very simple. And I have to show you, you can't see it from the favorites view. But if I go to no label, you can see that this is a simple filter. The filter query is no labels. So if a task doesn't have a label, I can see it. So if, let's say, I accidentally move something into another project, you could see like, none of these have labels. I better add them. And there's quite a few here. So I will actually have a task, and I think I have it. Label. Add labels to pertinent task and no label filter. So that's something I do Monday, which is my leveling day. So I'll put tasks in there like that. And these are a lot of tasks that have just shown up. So you can see there's tons, but I'm not worried about it. And then here's another filter I have called the capture closet. And let's go to the capture closet filter down here. Again, probably some Easter eggs here. No date. If I haven't put a date on a task, and again, I don't use dates as my primary driver generally. It's one of my ways, one of the lenses I look at my task list. No date. If I accidentally forgot to put a date on something, or I just want to start going through things that are kind of like, I guess you can consider it a someday maybe list. You can see there's a bunch of things here. Okay, Mike, when do you want to do this stuff? Now, one of the caveats to this is you'll see here is with the Productivityist podcast, and you'll probably see it if I scroll down a little bit more here. And I saw it as I filtered by. See, this is all part of a template that I use for the Productivityist podcast, but I know that, so I can just leave that. If that's the only thing that shows up, then I'm okay with it. If it's something that isn't with the podcast on it, then I don't. And by the way, the capture any of these ones that have no label or are listed as the no date, if they are shared projects, you'll see that too. See how it's got like the silhouette here? So I don't worry about those. Again, it's all about like trying to stay in that state of flow. Finally, we'll go to another filter. We'll go to another filter here. So let's say this is another filter I use called my 3 absolutes. And I know Carl talks about this. P1, and mine says anything that's overdue or in the next 10 days. P1 for me is these are things I need to do. Okay. If it's blue, if it's the second level, it's important tasks. And this is, again, a very simple filter. P2 and overdue in the next 30 days, right? So that's telling me these are all important tasks. They're not urgent, but these are things I want to do. And then the other way I use flags, and I use the P3 flag for this, is I used to. Let me phrase that. I used to, because now we have recurring, right? We have recurring in here. So you can use this, and you could favorite it, I guess, if you want. But I used to use P3 for this. In fact, you could see that because there's all these blue ones. So I still use, or whatever level it is, I can't remember which color is which at this point. I think it's blue. Yes, it's blue for P3 because they've changed over the years as well. These are all recurring tasks. So I can see them quickly. And by the way, if I do end up looking at today, they rise above everything. Okay. Finally, what about the times? When do I use times? I use them if there's something I definitely want to complete by a certain time. I want to get my journal done before 11 p.m. I want to get perfect activity on my Apple Watch before 11:59 p.m. I want to have written 3,333 words before the end of the day. And admittedly, I probably should edit this because I haven't hit that all summer. This has been
one of those
postponed.
Yeah. I think we all have those, and we're lying to ourselves if we don't.
But things I don't use, I don't really use the reminders. I don't really use them. I don't need them. That's what my calendar's for. If I'm going to have something in my calendar that reminds me, it's something I need to do at a very specific time. I need to be somewhere. I will use them for location-based stuff occasionally. But again, if you're just starting out, you want to keep it simple. You don't need, if you put the date on here or the time, you're going to see it. It's going to turn red, once it's past that time, right? So again, it's all about keeping that stuff kind of simple. Now, let me show you.
Mike, do you mind me asking, do you use a calendar do you use any calendar integration, or what's your reliance on your calendar like?
No, and I'm gonna switch off of the screen now. I use Woven as my calendar of choice. I believe that the calendar is the directory for your days, and the to-do list is the details of the day. So it's kind of like walking into a shopping mall, and you're like, okay, I know I'm in a mall. Where are the stores? The mall, the mall itself is like, okay, I know that there's a Target in here. I know there's an EB Games or an Apple store, but I don't know where. Oh, here's the mall, the mall map. Oh, there's where the Apple store is. I have a general idea of what's in the Apple store or what's in Target, but I don't know the prices. I don't know what stock levels they have. I don't know any of the details. So the calendar is like that mall map, but I don't get the details until I actually get to the store. So on my calendar, this is where daily themes come in. So today in my calendar, I have a calendar that's basically used for my own personal reference that says daily themes. It's free. Like, I don't make myself busy. And I say, oh, it's deep work day. Today's deep work day. I know I should be working on deep work. Let me look at that deep work label or that focused filter in Todoist so I know what to do. That's my overarching focus. The calendar, and again, this is classic getting things done training. And I don't follow getting things done to a T at all anymore. In fact, I think there's some elements of it I don't like. But the idea that calendars are for appointments or commitments that you've made at very specific dates and times, that like they're not movable, that's what the calendar's for. And I don't want to see, and I've done this before. Remember when Todoist first integrated calendars with Todoist? Number one, if you're going to do it, I'll give you this example. Number one, create a separate calendar for Todoist. Please, please, please. Because once you've committed to it, it's there. And it's very difficult to pull out the tasks. So it's better, if you're going to do it, to create an actual separate calendar called Todoist tasks and use that as the way to connect the two calendars. And that's the way I've told other clients to do it. It may have changed since I've actually done this, but don't make it like my work calendar is going to be also where I keep my Todoist tasks. Because number one, if you're looking at your Todoist list and you've got 53 tasks for the day on it, your calendar is going to be chock full. You need to create a separate, because it is separate. A to-do list is separate from your calendar.
Yep. Yeah, I would be I would caution anybody that thinks that's planning to convert their to-do list into a calendar into to-do list. They are two different things, although a lot of people use them connected. You can make it work.
Yep. I think when I look at productivity, I look at it like kind of like a gestalt, like that German word, which is like the sum of the parts is great. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts kind of thing. Email is part of it. Now we're seeing conversational applications such as Slack, Twist, great example, part of it.
Yep.
It's a fairly new part to it. But the three primaries are email, calendar, and to-do list application. All of them are really good at those individual fundamental things. When you start to use a calendar as a to-do list app, you're going to run into friction points. When you start to use a to-do list app as a calendar app, you're going to run into friction points. But when you figure out how to make them mesh together nicely, and again, I can look at my calendar and go, and this is what I do when I train people in time crafting. I go, are you more of a to-do list person or are you more of a calendar person? And they say, well, and I can ask questions and know right away. Well, yeah, you know what? I keep my to-do list on my calendar. Great, you're a calendar person. Okay, so here's how you can use a to-do list with your calendar. If they say, oh, no, I have this long to-do list and it's a laundry list of things and I can't filter it and I don't know how to look. Okay, great, you're a to-do list person. Let's get you to be lean more in the other direction. So you've got this balance of reasoned approach to productivity. And you can do that easily. Like, again, I want to stress that when I can take everything I've done in Todoist and move it to paper. I can take all of and I'll share my screen in a little bit more just so you could see my labels in just a second before we get to questions. And I want to make sure I give lots of times for questions. If I am looking at a paper, like an index card, let's say, right? And there's those new analog cards, which I think are fantastic that Jeff from Ugmonk made. So I use those as well as my daily driver. I'm playing with all different kinds of analog tools and digital tools. Is if I know a task is going to take me a lot of energy, I'll put an up arrow next to it. And if I know it's going to take me little energy, I'll put a down arrow next to it. Or if I think it's going to be 5 minutes or less, I'll put a 5 in a circle. I can take some of the things I use in Todoist and use them on paper and vice versa. Same thing. I can put on the top of this index card deep work, and then I can write all those things. I can actually go into Todoist, go, I don't want to be interrupted all day. Let me look at those tasks that are read in Todoist and put them on paper and know that they're aligned with what. So you need to be able to switch back and forth. And I know someone said in the comments here on Crowdcast, like, think about working for a hospital or a place where privacy is paramount. On the way to the office, you could look at Todoist, go, here are all the things I need to do for work today, transfer them to an index card. And then at the end of the day, go back into Todoist and check them off. Like, there is going to be some limitations that you're going to need to be able to navigate. And I mean, I've had conversations with Amir and with lots of people. Todoist, you don't need to worry about Todoist going away anytime soon, if at all. Like, it's been it's been stressed time and time again. But I have seen apps go away. Astrid, Microsoft To Do was Wunderlist. There's so many that go. You need to be able to go, okay, I need to be able to put it here, not here, because here is a terrible place. And if I share my screen again, you're going to see different things that are on there that you're like, why would you put that on to-do list? Look, where is it? Fix my reputation. What's that mean? Right?
Yeah, explain.
Fix my reputation. Well,
I thought you had a pretty good one.
No, I think I could improve it. So that's more of and notice it's in bold. Like, I want to be able to say, okay, like, I'm going to spend more time doing things more consistently. We're often our own worst critics anyways, but I want to see that. Now, I don't need to look, make a difference in one person's day. I've done a video on my YouTube channel. Like, this is one of the most important things you can do in a day. Because that ultimately, at the end of the day, no one's going to look at your gravestone and go, you know what, Mike Vardy, he had enlightened karma in Todoist, and he completed all. Like, they're going to go, look, he made a difference. He did think about the changes you need to help make, help my wife be happy. Review, stroll through the gardens and pluck weeds. Like, there's some stuff in here. You're like, why would you put that there? I don't want to have to think about that.
Yeah,
I don't have to think about it. I just want to know that I'll do it. Right.
It's such an important thing, I think, for like a lot of people I know obsess about separating work from life, or really trying to like, well, what should go in Todoist and what shouldn't. And I don't even care if it's Todoist or if it's any other tool that you're using. But I think there's so much to be said for what you just mentioned, which is this is a terrible way to keep track of things by trying to use your own head. Well, you have to put it in somewhere. You have to let something else be the brain for you, and you'll get back to it later. But just put it in there. I did the same thing. I started dumping like tons of like little things to do around the house, just little reminders to sometimes do something, and it's helped me so much. It has nothing to do with work. It really has nothing to do with productivity or accomplishing anything. It's just these little reminders that take the headache of having that on your mind off your plate.
And most of these are in my shallow work, which is low energy. So you could see, like, if you're looking at my labels right now, those are those are character and whatever it takes, no matter what, my annual axiom. Those are things I want to espouse. So I'll look at those a lot. Then these are my horizontal themes. Notice again, all the same color. Daily themes, all the same color. Sunday is planning. Monday, leveling. Tuesday is looking. Actually, Tuesday is not looking anymore. Tuesday is listening. Wednesday is looking. Thursday is deep work. Friday is triage. Saturday is family. Then my wife, my daughter, my son. Those are all people or resource-based modes, which I've talked about before in my work. Then these are all also resources, but these are apps. Like, what can I do in email? What can I do by phone? What can I do in Evernote? Social media. Shallow work. I also have deep work, but deep work is also a daily theme, so that overrides that right there. And then I've got activities: learning, writing, errand running, money managing, reading, researching, cooking. Look, I know all these things I can cook, right? These are all my recipes. I don't call it recipes. I call, hey, I'm going to do some cooking. What can I cook? And then time-based ones. Hey, I only have 5 minutes. What can I do in 5 minutes or less? Oh, here are all the things I can check the physio website for booking. I can fill out the Ask Podcast intake form because they want me to. want me to do that. I can strip the bed, because we need to change the sheets every week. I can, pay a bill on my Capital One. I can change that to whatever it needs to be. I can review co-working space in New York City whenever I can go back to New York City. Like all those things show up there, right? But again, to your point, like look at all these water lawn, clean outside of windows. I know that that's got to be done again in June 2021. And more often than not, it's got to be done. That's when I want to think about it. That's when I want it to have my attention. And that's normally what all of these tasks are. Not all, most of the tasks are, I want these things to have my attention, my absolute attention. They don't necessarily need to be done that day. Like the credit card pins don't need to be done, all that stuff. But all of these things, I need them to have my attention. And that's how I use labels. You could see I've got lots of labels here. I've got projects, of course, as you can see, and they're divided up into their primary, which is personal. And then underneath are some nested projects. And I've got things in here. Look, again, speaking of no subtasks, look, my son and I want to build Lego Atlantis. Here are all the things that we need to do. They're all tasks. They're not subtasks. They're all here. And yes, I know Todoist has limits as to how many tasks you can have inside a project, but that's exactly why, in my opinion, you should have projects, because tasks and subtasks add up. So if you're creating separate projects for these things, you'll have multiple projects, but you won't run into that limit. If you do, chances are you've got multiple projects inside of a project, right? So this is where, and you can see I'm not even, look, productivity is primary, 514 tasks. And then inside of it, I've got my coaching clients, which I'm not going to show you necessarily, but professional, you can see there, like, I want to make a novel. And this was from NaNoWriMo 2018. It's still sitting here. I'm not worried about it. It'll show up again. It'll show up in October, and I'll probably rename the project 2020 or maybe 2021, depending on what my monthly theme is. But it's simple. I can navigate it. I can see it really quickly, and I can make things happen. Because at the end of the day, it's not about checking off as many boxes as possible. It's about checking off the right boxes. And for me, Todoist allows me to do what I believe productivity to be, which is marrying your intention, what you need and want to do, with your attention. How am I going to make sure that those things happen?
Yeah. And there's no way you could, in this short amount of time, go into all the detail that I'm sure we would both love to. But you mentioned it before, and I would just reiterate to anybody watching that's kind of jiving with what Mike's saying here. If you want to learn more, of course, he's got tons of content out there. The Skillshare course that he put together with us a couple of years ago, which actually I was just reminded when you mentioned this, Mike, was the first time you and I connected.
Yep, and it's one of
that course. It's
awesome.
Awesome.
One of the most popular this day. It's still one of the most popular productivity courses on Skillshare.
Yeah, Skillshare still talks when I have conversations with Skillshare. They still bring that one up. So I would really recommend if anybody's out there to use a Skillshare free trial. If you don't have one, an account, definitely go check it out. There's lots of good content on both Todoist and really great advice from Mike. I know some people.
One more quick point before we get to questions.
Yeah.
You'll notice that the only way that you can do all the things I talked about is with a premium account. People, this is a big thing that I've seen in the app space for a long time, and I'll be quick about it. If you want an app to stick around, pay for it. Pay for it. Todoist is not expensive at all. It's one of the least expensive productivity apps out there, and it's so powerful for what you pay. So if you're like, I don't know if I need premium, on the fence, no. It is literally one of the best investments you can make with your time. So if you're watching this right now and you're like, oh, well, I like to do this, I'm just going to use it. You won't be able to do the stuff I've talked about. You won't be able to do a lot of what we've talked about, but it's not like the investment is going to break the bank. If you can't cobble together the money, the annual fee for Todoist, then you've probably got bigger problems, and your time is definitely worth it. So I just want to throw that in there. Yes, I know I'm an ambassador. Yes, but honestly, I've tried so many apps, and I still use others. Pay for premium. It's well worth it.
Yeah, that's a really good point to highlight as well. Like that, yeah, a lot of the features that you were talking about, a lot of us here are kind of like power users of the product, so we kind of take it for granted that some of these things are there. But that is very, very true. And yeah, thank you for the endorsement and backing us up to pay for it. That it does help when people help pay the bills, for sure. We want to be around. So So we're going to take about 10 minutes now to do questions. We will not get to all of them. There's no way, but we're going to do our best. And so
If
the one
you
that
want
got
to ask,
the
if you want to ask, if we don't get to your question, email me at askmike@productivityist.com and I'll reply to your question via email. Okay. So if we can't get to
awesome.
it on this particular call, then just email me and I'll answer it via email.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, thanks, Mike. That's really good. We will, and I will also when I follow up after this, I will send everybody that's joined an email. We'll add some show notes and stuff on YouTube, so that information will be there, so everybody can reach out to Mike if we don't get to your question. The one that got the most upvotes, and I saw a lot of chatter about this in the chat as well, is how do you deal with deadlines in Todoist? And maybe you can use an example of a current project you're working on or something. But yeah, how do you deal with deadlines?
So because I have those daily themes, a lot of stuff shows up regularly in my, so for example, let's use this knowable course that I'm working on. If someone gives me a deadline for it, I immediately I create the project in Todoist right away, and I'll start to put if things I know need due dates in it, I'll put them on there. But more often than not, the labels will allow me to move the project forward consistently, as the timeline progresses. So for example, you saw that I have deep work day. Well, deep work means this is the only meeting I will have all day today, right? So I normally don't do any meetings on Thursdays. Again, it allows my brain to know, okay, Thursday, no meetings, I can just do deep work. So I will look at all the things that are categorized with deep work. And if I see that there's a project there, I'm like, oh yeah, that thing, then I'll switch to project view. So I often look at the label view first, or the filtered label view. And then if I know, once I get through those things, I'm like, okay, I need to double down on this project. I'll work towards that. The project normally will have a due date on it, so that way I know, but it's recurring. So I'll put the due date, like for a project, let's say, on the actual task itself. So this is due on like September 23rd, 2020 in the task, but then I'll make the task recurring, like that recurring, so I see it consistently. So that way I'm like, okay, I need to make sure I move towards this. But because I don't use dates as the primary driver, and labels often are the primary thing that I look at, and then maybe priority levels, that's kind of how I work towards it. If I have a quick deadline, it'll get flagged. It'll get like red flag. I need to do this. That's another thing too, is the red flag helps bring it to the top. But by and large, if I make every day, like I said, a due date, a DO date, then I'm making measured progress on a project or a task consistently. It's how I got that's what the right 3,333 words were, right? Like I had that when I was working on the book. That showed up every day. So that's the main reason. That's the main way I do it. And it works. What do they say? It works 90% of the time, 90% of the time. I guess I would say.
That's a great batting average. Well, I think you got to take that if you get it. Okay, that's great. I hope for me that answered the question. I was also curious. I saw that come up in the chat, and so that answers the question from my standpoint. You guys let me know in the chat if you want to get some elaboration on that. I'm gonna there's several questions about Todoist as the product itself, and I'm gonna skip past those for now and go straight to some more questions directly from Mike. We'll leave the communication on the evolution of the product to us, and while we've got Mike's valuable time here, we'll go with questions directly for him. So somebody said, I start strong with any productivity tool, but over time I find myself overwhelmed with the amount of tasks I see. I would appreciate any tips to reduce tasks as they pile up. This is a huge problem. It's a great question. People get the tool in any tool, it might not be Todoist, but they get it because they want to clear up the clutter in their life. And then they look at the app a week later and they go, oh my God, I have too much to do. Shut down, turn off. I don't want to see it again. So what is your advice, Mike, as a productivity strategist?
So labels and filters are your friend. You're going to everyone has more tasks that they have to do that aren't even in Todoist right now. I know I do. Everybody does. Yeah. Because your brain, there's always going to be something to do. You'll never be done. So once you reconcile yourself with the fact, like my to-do list is, for all intents and purposes, never ending, You just need to have a way to look through it through different lenses. That's why daily themes work for me, right? That's why mode-based work, where I'm like, okay, when I'm overwhelmed, I'm like, oh man, I'm so you know what? I'm tired. What can I do when I'm tired? Oh, here's all the shallow work tasks I can do right now. Because we're human beings, right? So that's going to happen. You're overwhelmed by the tool itself because it's new to you. And then you're overwhelmed by all the stuff you've thrown in it, right? So what you need to do, and that's why when you asked me, Mike, when you put things in your inbox, do you take the time to add labels and no, because that, as a new user, if you're a new user, you do that, you're going to go, this is taking me way longer to add this stuff than if I just did it right now, or if I just wrote it down. But that's not an app problem. That's a workflow problem. That's a, you're breaking your flow, which is why when I'm processing emails, I can send things to Todoist. Oh, like if you ask me a question, I may not answer it right away, and I may have to take some time. I'll send it to Todoist, and I'll put like answer so-and-so, but I won't add dates, labels, any of the projects. It'll just sit in the inbox until I go look in the inbox, go, now I'm in that mode. I'm going to process my inbox. So that's what you need to do. You will always have tons of tasks. You'll always have tons of projects too, but they will end. You will complete them. You need to have a different way to look at them. And that's why, when I work with people, I talk about theming their time. I talk about working by modality instead of by due date or by project, because projects cause you to move to different location. But if you're in a mode, hey, I'm going to go into email mode. I'm going to go into high energy mode. I'm going to go into Ann mode. My wife, what are all the things I can do with Ann right now? What are all the things that I can do that'll take me 5 minutes? That's a much more human way of operating. And Todoist lets you do that if you take the time to add those labels or set up simple filters.
Yep. Yeah. As somebody just said in the chat, probably one of the most valuable things you can take from today is that you don't have to be a slave to due dates. And I think this is really a key takeaway, because I think a powerful thing for some people is adding the due date function to their life. They're bad at due dates. They're bad at organizing when things need to get done. They always procrastinate. And so setting a due date makes some people feel comfortable, but it's not the only way to become a productive person. And you might say it's a bad way to become productive. So,
well, it's the same principle of, and I use this a lot. I actually have this guy right here. This is the villain from The Incredibles, Syndrome, right? And if you watch the Incredibles movie, his plot was to make everybody super, because when everyone's super, no one will be. So if you add dates to everything, everything is dated. Everything's important. Everything's urgent. If you add red flag to everything and you don't give meaning to it, then it doesn't matter. Same thing with any of these tools. If you start, labeling, over labeling, when I say labeling, I mean like overemphasizing, right? To the point where it doesn't serve you, then all of a sudden you're going to feel overwhelmed. So it's like, don't be a slave to those dates, because time moves on whether we want it to or not. I don't like the term time management, but it's universally understood. Think about it as attention management, expectation management, things like that, energy, task management, because you can manage tasks. The word manage comes originally from horsemanship. It was like originally like an Italian and French term that was led to control horses. Well, that takes a lot of work, and time moves on whether we want it to or not. So Todoist allows you to have agency over these things, but it's up to you to personalize it, to make it your own, and to play with it, to adapt, to grow. But simplicity scales. And once you have that framework in place, it's going to foster freedom.
Yeah, I think it's not. You touched on it a lot today, but the mode, working in modes and day theming, and these are not things that are necessarily directly tied to the use of Todoist. It's more like adjacent to, or in conjunction with Todoist. You can use some of these principles, and you talk about this more in some of your other content and the Skillshare course, but. I think this is like for somebody just getting started with Todoist, or somebody maybe wanting to rethink the way they're using Todoist, revisiting this concept and then using that alongside Todoist of day theming and really thinking about working inside of modes can be a huge game changer. I mean, that can really just overnight change the way you get things done. It's amazing.
Do we want to field a couple more questions? I can go a little bit over if we want to have a couple more.
Yeah, we'll go a few minutes over.
Sure.
So There are some questions over here. Somebody asked, I'm gonna save this one. Yogi, tune in for the next one with Peter about how to use this as a professional project management tool. We're gonna go deeper into that in the next one. Let's see here. All right. So, Mike, this is a very general question, but I'm actually very curious to hear your answer. So, how do you measure your productivity? I'm going to do as a point B to this one. It was asked earlier. People were very interested in the chat. Even if Karma isn't your rating system that you personally use, people do want to know your Karma score if you're willing to share it.
So I'm enlightened. I'm at the what is my actual Karma score? It is gosh, what is it at this point? My Karma score is 52,486. That's my Karma score.
There you go, people.
And
so do you use that as the way? Do you rate yourself by this? No,
of course. And there's a reason I don't, is because I don't know the algorithm. I don't. To me. I have number one. There's two ways I do it. So I have what I call the productivity ROI, the realized objective index, and it's what I use to my clients. So I score, and you'll see this in Todoist too, is like the red, like I said, those are things I need to do, and the orange. So priority 1 is red, priority 2 is orange. Those are needs and wants. So if I complete needs, I'll look at my task list for the day. Needs are worth 1 point, wants are worth 2, right? And I don't want to go too deep in the weeds on this, but if I complete 10 tasks and they're all need to do's, that my index will be a 1.0, which was a pretty productive day. If I do a combination of needs and wants and it gets over 1, then that was a really productive day. If it's below 1, I'm like, okay, I must not have, I either was overwhelmed or I did things I didn't need or want to do. I just did things that were on the list. That's how I do it. But the bigger one, so that's quantitative and qualitative to a degree. But the biggest way I track is journaling. Yeah. I write, you saw that in my list. Like, it's one of the things I write in day one. I take photos on my phone. I dictate my entries because it's late at night and I can tell the story of how I felt for the day. So Todoist will tell me all the things I did. The calendar will tell me all the appointments I had, but the stories behind them, the nuance, those magical moments that have perspective. There's a movie I watch every single August 31st, and it's called About Time. It's made by the same guy who did Love Actually, and I think 4 Weddings and a Funeral. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
I haven't.
It is a bit cheesy. I cry every year I watch it. I'm not afraid to admit it, but it's such a layered story. And the thing about it is that there's so many magical moments that you don't check off, that you don't think about. Like, the fact that, it's been 60 days since I've had soda pop, right? So I'm like, that's something I celebrate. Or the fact that my son is like, hey, Dad, we got my new Lego set in today. Like, those are things I want to chronicle, because every year I'll go back and read those journal entries and I'll be like, oh my God, do you remember when my wife took like this yoga class? Or my daughter will be like, oh my God, I remember when we were in San Diego, and my daughter actually came in during the reading process this year, because I read it on the 31st of August as well, because I start my year in September. And I said, give me a date and I'll tell you what happened. And she gave me dates. I've been journaling for like the last 8 years. So she's like, February 10th, 2014. And I'll be able to tell her what happened. So journaling, to me, it's the story of your life. Todoist, again, you're getting that quantitative, which is what Karma is. It's quantitative and somewhat qualitative. Mm-hmm. The calendar tells you what you did. You can see it in the calendar, but the story, how you felt, all that, that's journaling. And I think it's one of the most undervalued and underappreciated productivity tools you can have, is keeping a journal.
Awesome advice. What do you use, a journaling app, or are you actually writing?
I use Day One because it's simple. Plus, I've taken photos on my phone all day long. So again, people are like, well, how do you journal? Well, first off, there's a tool called the 5-minute journal out there. So if you can't take 5 minutes in your day to journal, again, that's what, like
find the 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's find the 5 minutes. And some of my journal entries are like, crap, still have writer's block. Like, that's been the entry. But it also allows me to dictate it. So if I'm tired of writing for the day, if I've written the 3,333 words, it allows me to just say it, right? But I do have a handwritten journal as well for more like, profound kind of things I've been thinking about. But by and large, they go into Day One. And then, like I said, I can review it every year and go, oh, I didn't I did this. I can see the successes and acknowledge the failures and grow from them. So day one to me is, and if you're on an Android device, use Journey is another great journaling tool. But I love the fact that I can see the story of my days, my weeks, my months, my life in one app from an emotional standpoint, as opposed to oh, good, my score is over almost 52,000. That's pretty productive. But what does that mean? I have to have meaning behind this stuff, right?
Well, that's an excellent, very inspirational way, I think, to wrap this up. And as a side note to that, for everybody that's interested, there were some questions about karma. You alluded to this. Karma is something that we love. Our Todoist lovers love karma, but we know we can even do better, and we want to really make karma even more powerful and more intuitive and more exciting. So. Be on the lookout for that. Over no promises, just saying that's on our mind for those of you wondering.
I had a great time today. I had a great time. This was awesome. Thank you so much.
Super inspirational stuff. Good, really interesting, nice new ways to think about things. Where can people follow you, follow your work, and find you best if they want to learn more?
So the best way is productivityist.com. And I'm going to give you, I have a 30 days of time crafting course that I really, if you want to start using time crafting instead of Todoist, and that's how I'm checking out apps these days. I don't go, okay, can you time craft in this? And you can definitely time craft in Todoist. So if you go to productivityist.com/$5, like spelled out 5, I learned enough from Todoist to make sure I spell out my numbers. Productivityist.com/$5. It's a 30 days of time crafting email course. You get bonus materials and all that stuff. It's probably the best way to get introduced to my work across the time crafting methodology and philosophy that I teach. So I'd love for you to go there. And I'm at Productivityist on all the social media platforms as well.
Awesome. And the podcast is
the Productivityist podcast.
Yeah. So productivity, you just remember Productivityist and you can, the good old Google machine, you can find Mike Vardy. So thank you guys, everybody who tuned in on the various platforms. I think I am correct in saying this was the most attended Todoist office hours yet. So we're super excited that people are joining us, taking an interest, and we're very happy to have our Todoist ambassadors like Mike here to share their expertise with us. We'll send everything out via email after this with a recording and links and everything you could ask for. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks again, Mike. Hope you'll come back and join us.
Absolutely. This is I'd love to, when boards are full out, show how I use boards and how that has layered into this. But I had a great time. Thanks to everybody who joined in the chat. And this is a great time, and keep up the great work at Todoist. You guys are doing a phenomenal job.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Have a great day. Everybody, wherever you are in the world, getting started, ending, have a great rest of the day.
See you later.